Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to another director collection. Today's director comes from Korea, and it's Ki-Duk. If you want to be reductive, you could say he's kind of like Lee Chang-dong light. His characters all kind of exist in the fringes of society, sometimes the criminal fringes of society. They're not necessarily the nicest people you want to meet. Sometimes they're fairly animalistic in their behaviour. I mean, his debut film, which we'll get to, features a character who shares his nickname with that of a reptile. He walks that line of unlikable protagonist that sometimes, for me, some filmmakers cross the line too far, and I just don't really engage with the characters if they're too unlikable. Some of his films have violence in them, and sexual violence in them. There are small moments of grace, but they're really about isolation, alienation, and being miserable for the most part. Now, sadly, Ki-Duk died in 2020 at the age of 60 from COVID. And obviously, some people think COVID didn't exist, so Ki-Duk died at age 60 of nothing then. Now, I had seen one of his films years ago and then revisited it, but it was really on the advice of the Bulgarian troglodyte. If you go to his channel, previously SGS Arts, previously SGS, who recommended one of these films, and then I went on a little bit of a splurge, you might say, and bought quite a few of them. Now, a lot of them are on DVD, which you can pick up cheaply. But obviously, all those cheap DVDs add up when you're going down a rabbit hole. So probably his most famous, and you could argue it's perhaps his most atypical, is Spring, Summer, Autumn, Winter and Spring. Now, Umbrella in Australia have released a deluxe Blu-ray of this. I just picked up the Tartan DVD. I might have to accidentally pick up the Blu-ray because it is an absolutely beautiful film. It's pretty much just about a monk who works and lives in this temple, which is on an island, and his protege, over not the same spring, not a consecutive spring, summer, autumn, winter and spring, but over years. Not a huge amount of dialogue, but it is absolutely beautiful. Just literally a fairly zen film, again about how we just repeat the cycle over and over again. But again, it is, I would say, a little bit atypical of most of these films in the sense that it is kind of zen. There's nobody in it who is particularly unlikable or horrible. It is just kind of beautiful, and I'm not sure you can really call his other films like that sort of level of, it's very meditative and you just get in the zone. It's full of life lessons, and it's really quite wonderful. So as I said, I might accidentally upgrade to the Umbrella edition. Then we have the Coast Guard. which is about a group of soldiers who are tasked to defend South Korea's bit of the water entry of South Korea. There's lots of boredom, but then one of the soldiers does something he shouldn't have, and that kind of means events spiral out of control. It's really about the boredom of a group of men, and then if you add that with guns, it's generally not a good idea. Again, it's brutal, unflinching. Again, completely different to spring, summer, autumn, winter and spring. You could argue it goes on a little bit too long at 94 minutes. But again, you get sucked in to the story and the characters, who aren't necessarily the nicest people in the world, but it works. So that's the Coast Guard, which is really, really good. I did find that the batting average in all these films is pretty high. And then I have on DVD, I think it's like a Korean import, it's Bad Guy. This has a bizarre slipcover. So this is this actor is actually in Ki-Duk's first film, which I'll get to, but this one does walk the line of unlikable protagonist, but to me it still works. So he's a guy that's relatively irredeemable. He's basically just a thug. He fancies this college girl who obviously has nothing to do with him, so in front of her boyfriend he goes up and kisses her, I believe, with tongues, which leads to a fight, and then it ends up through several machinations that the girl owes money and she ends up having to prostitute herself, and he's one of the kind of minders or pimps of the brothel that she's forced to work at. He has two other, I'll say pals, colleagues. Again, women don't particularly get the best of times in this film, and I'm sure it might just be a little bit too much for a lot of people, but I do think it strikes the right balance just of the unlikable protagonist. And then this is the one film of Kim Ki-Duk's, or one of the films of Kim Ki-Duk's that Bulgarian Troglodyte sings very high praises of. This is 3 Iron, which I have to say was excellent. I will have to watch it again, but this is pretty special. This is about a guy who enters strangers' houses and spends time when they're away, and then he goes into the house of somebody who's actually there, a woman who happens to be a model, who has an abusive husband, and things proceed. I'm not going to go too far into it, but again, it's certainly one of my favourites. It's not my favourite, but I'll get to that. Yeah, this is really good, and I would highly recommend it. Again, you can pick up the DVD for under £5. And then we have his debut, which is Crocodile, which stars the same actor who played the bad guy. Now for me, this does cross the line of unlikable protagonist. It's still a good film. So you've got this young boy, this older guy, and Crocodile, who basically live next to the river, basically homeless. But Crocodile makes a living pretty much robbing people who jump in the river trying to kill themselves. And a woman, he fishes a woman out one day. I mean, immediately tries to rape her. For me, he's too much of an unlikable character. You know, bad guy for me just worked because he was the right side of that line. For me, Crocodile's the wrong side of that line. But it still has wonderful moments. It still has poetic moments. But just for me, he's a little bit too much of a scumbag. You know, he's a pretty bad scumbag. Maybe I'm just getting old, but films with people who are too much of a scumbag just don't do anything for me as much as they may be used to. But certainly as a debut, you can see what Ki-Duk would kind of become in these other films that I'm going to show you. So this one might be my favourite, alongside Spring, Summer, Autumn, Winter and Spring. But as I said, that's kind of an outlier when you watch all of these other films. This is The Bow, but I guess you could also call it The Bow. This is about an old man who has this young girl on a boat that's stationary, but he runs a fishing service. But she also retells the future in a little unique way. There's bows in it as far as material to wrap around things. There's a bow, as in the bow and arrow, because that's part of the way the young girl tells fortunes. But of course, as you would expect, a young man comes on a fishing trip and the young girl has feelings, as she's supposed to marry this 60-year-old man once she becomes of age. I mean, water is a big thing in all of Ki-Duk's films. Water is a huge factor. Again, this is a tartan DVD. This really needs a Blu-ray. I mean, it might have one, obviously. But this is an absolutely beautiful film, which is probably my second favourite. And then we have the film that I saw years ago and obviously didn't really realise it was Ki-Duk. This is The Isle, and this is the Nova Media Blu-ray, 187 of 700 if you're interested. And again, strangely enough, this has water and prostitution. Water and prostitution seems to feature quite a lot in Ki-Duk films. And again, this is another fantastic film. I think out of all these films, I think his batting average was like 4 out of 5. So if I ever get around to a 2025 director ranking, I think Ki-Duk might be a scorching new entry. And this is another, and lastly, the one that I watched the most recently, another little gem, Birdcage Inn, which I might not be able to show the back of it. Again, this has water. Again, this has prostitution. So this character here is a prostitute who comes to the Birdcage Inn, which is a little inn run by a family, and they have a daughter who's not quite ready for sex, even though she's going out with somebody. She has an antagonistic approach to the prostitute. The prostitute also has a horrible pimp not sure there's any likeable pimps in the world, I don't know. Obviously lots of little things happen. It's almost like little vignettes. But it's kind of one of the few, well, not really one of the few, where it's the females are kind of taking charge, even though obviously one of them is being exploited as a prostitute. But again, it's kind of beautiful, even though nasty things happen in it. I guess that's, you could almost sum up Ki-Duk as far as his films are kind of beautiful, even though horrible things tend to happen. So if you want something a little bit different, his films probably upset you in some regard, but he is capable, or was capable, of producing quite beautiful work as well. So please let me know if you've seen any of these Ki-Duk films and what you think of them, and please let me know if more of these films are available on Blu-ray, or if you accidentally pre-ordered the Umbrella Entertainment lovely Blu-ray edition of Spring, Summer, Autumn, Winter and Spring. Please let me know if you have. So thanks very much for watching. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying farewell.